So I'm going to start to present who are we, or I mean, who we are. Do you can still see the screen sharing? I don't think so.
No, no.
No, no.
Yes, because I have two monitors here and one is hiding another one. So share screen, yeah, and here we go. So welcome to the first PTM edition via remote, and thank you all for being here. For the newcomers on this event, or for those who don't know us, we are a group of friends that decided to contribute to the community by starting to organize events where we could gather everyone interested in all topics regarding, of course, testing. In 2009, last year, we partnered with MOT, Ministry of Testing. Normally, in each event, we start with one or two presentations, and then we discuss these and other themes along with a coffee break provided by the host company. This time, we choose one speaker, and we don't have a coffee break. Sorry. So this is the organizers. You can reach us anytime, and here is a summary of the what we have been doing with some of the last meetups, where the last one was in person, of course, until now, in the company Caucus. Until we see, we will do the next meetups remotely to ensure everyone's safety. The next one, we have some agreements to share with you, like, just a second, like ask you all to submit ideas, talks, innovation topics. Wrong mouse. Maybe the next meetup will happen in June. Maybe it's not a promise, but we will see. And wrong mouse again. About RGPD, we are being recorded, so if you don't want to appear, or if you don't want your parents to know what are you up to, please turn off your video for the RGPD. Another issue, it's about questions for Lisa at the end. Please use the chat. In the end, you can ask questions by writing, and she will respond in the best way. Probably not all the questions, but you can always contact her directly if something remains unclear. Because it's not going to be possible to she answer all your questions. So you can reach us by LinkedIn, you can reach us by Facebook, you can reach us by Slack, you can reach us by Twitter, you can reach the PTM for many ways. Without any more introductions, I pass the ball to our speaker, Lisa Crispin, who doesn't need any introductions. She will talk about, as you know, a whole team approach to quality and continuous delivery. So, Lisa, I'm going to stop this sharing, and I'm going to pass you the ball, and the stage is it's all yours.
Well,
Just a
thank you
second.
so much. That's a very kind words, and I'm so happy to be here. And I hope that someday I will be there. Someday we'll do this again in person, and I can be there in person.
We are waiting for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you see my slide there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, make sure it's my slide and not my notes. All right. So, as advertised, I'm going to talk about how the whole team gets together to build quality in and do all the testing and still succeed with continuous delivery. If you do have, we talked about saving questions to the end. If you do have any questions that are clarifying questions, if I say something you don't understand, I don't want you to have trouble following. So do feel free to interrupt with those kind of questions, and I hope one of the organizers will notice in the chat, because I can't look in the chat right now. But feel free, and otherwise we'll talk at the end, and if we have more questions than time, I can answer them offline. So I am going to come to Portugal someday, I hope, because I now work for OutSystems. Hooray! And I actually still have tickets to go to Portugal in September, because I was supposed to speak at XA 2020 in Lisbon, and that's been put online, but I just haven't been able to bear canceling my tickets because we were so excited about the trip. But I'll probably have to. But anyway, I've been a tester on Agile teams for the last 20 years, and together with Janet Gregory, written several books, an online 5-hour video course, and we also have, through our Agile Testing Fellowship, we have a 3-day live course taught by trainers all over the world. Of course, we're not doing that in person right now, but we do have it available remotely facilitated, and we've adapted it. All the hands-on exercises are still there, all the small group exercises, but we've broken up the time more because it's hard to be online for 3 days in a row. So, but you can go to the website and find out about the online ones that are available. So as I said, I just started at the end of March with OutSystems, and I'm helping to build an observability practice. Even though I'm not an expert in observability, I would like to learn it. I think it's the next frontier for us testers, and so I'm hoping to help lead the charge. And I mentioned on my first slide, this is the growth of work that I've done with all these people, even more people. I've paired with all these people to put together workshops, tutorials on this topic. And so it's been a group effort. And so these are all the leading testing practitioners who are really getting into this area. So I've been lucky to be on a team that succeeded with continuous delivery even before we had the term continuous delivery. Back in the early 2000s. And the reason I think this happened was, as a team, when we started out, like every team, things were a mess. It was complete chaos. But we made a commitment together that we would deliver the best quality product that we could. So we would write code that we would take home and show our moms and put on our refrigerators. Do y'all do that in Portugal? Put things on your refrigerators? I don't know. And delight our customers with our application and help our business succeed. We wanted to make that commitment mean something because we knew things would get in our way. And so we really worked together, everybody in all the different roles and specialties on the team, and figured out how to do that continuous testing all the way around that DevOps loop that you see. We didn't have the word DevOps in either, but haven't had that experience. It's made me eager to help other teams have that same experience. And I want to share some of my stories because obviously that's a success story, but there were lots of failures involved, and I've had successes and failures since then. So my slides don't want to go on. So I'm going to talk mostly about a team I was on after that, which is also a great team, but you know, like everybody, we had problems. And I think you learn more from failure than from success. So I was on a team that wanted to move to continuous delivery, but really didn't have the foundation in place to succeed with that. So we had a lot of great things in place. We were doing most of the extreme programming practices. We were doing test-driven development, which is really, really important. It's scientific studies show that if you practice test-driven development, you're going to avoid about 80% of bugs. The developers were pairing all the time, all 100% pair programming. We were automating tests. They were automating tests at all the levels, unit level, API level, UI level. We decided all the cool kids are moving to the cloud. Let's move our application to the cloud. We built our deployment pipeline. We had our blue-green deploy where you have 2 live production servers and only one's accessible to customers. So you can deploy to the idle one and test it yourselves before you turn the switch and let customers see that. And so we had all this in place. It sounded great. We still had trouble we were trying to deploy once a week at that point, and honestly, we were still having trouble doing that sometimes. But in spite of that, the director in charge of development said, let's move towards continuous delivery. Let's start deploying twice a week. And as he said, you know, small changes are done more frequently, are less risky. That's the whole point of continuous delivery. And also we had the blue-green deploy, so we could always revert very easily. But I just had a bad feeling about it, and so did the other testers. We only had 3 testers on that team, but with about 30 developers, designers, and other people. We didn't feel good about it, but it's like, well, okay. So one of the problems that we had was we had automated literally thousands and thousands of tests, including at the UI level. But there were always things we couldn't automate, so we had a manual regression checklist. I wish that we were all in a room together, because I bet some, if I said, raise your hand if you've ever worked on a team with a manual testing checklist before you can release. I bet a lot of you have. And, you know, that was a really boring thing to have to do. And we had to do that every release. Nobody else wanted to do it, so it always fell to the testers, and we kind of got sucked into doing that, being the safety net, which is bad. And the problem when you go through a manual checklist like that is you notice something, it's not even part of the checklist, but you notice something odd as you're testing. Well, now you have to go see, is that a problem? Is that problem in production already? So it just takes a lot of time. And trying to do it for releasing twice a week, where we do the checklist, we find something wrong, we couldn't release yet, they make a new build candidate or new release candidate, we do the checklist again. So you can imagine this ended up taking all of our time trying to release twice a week. And, you know, we were basically being told, hey, just test faster. And despite all of our automated regression tests, clearly we didn't have very good coverage, which I'll talk about later. So a lot of times big problems weren't found until we deployed to that idle server of the blue-green servers. So when we started using it internally, we'd see a big problem, or even worse, we actually would flip the switch, deploy to production, and customers would say, hey, yeah, we have this problem. We were bad at doing release feature toggles. We experienced unexpected effects on other parts of the system. Our single page application had a lot of concurrent users, and that was hard to manage. So it was just a mess. And so we ended up going 2 or 3 or 4 weeks without any deploys because it was a mess. So yeah, that didn't go so well. So I've just told you what seems like a horror story, and it's going to get better. But I just like to stop for a minute Where's my phone so I can time it? And I'd like you know, we can't really do anything interactive with such a big group on Zoom, but I want you to think yourselves, just write down what you think is the biggest impediment for your team to move towards continuous delivery, whether you're actually trying to do that or not. What's blocking your team from doing frequent deploys to production? And especially frequent deploys of small changes, which is what continuous delivery should be about. So I'll just give you not too long to do that. But this is designed to help you think about this for a minute and maybe have a little better learning experience than me just talking at you. So the people I can see, it looks like they might be busy writing things down, so that's good. Let's see, if I had my donkey in the room, I could entertain you while that happens.
Lisa, you can activate sound of everybody if you want to.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. I didn't budget enough time for that, but okay. we can maybe do that later if y'all are brave. But anyway, so I hope that that's something that you'll think about and share with your team and start talking about those problems. And now I'm going to share with you what we did about it on my team. So how do we turn that mess around? So, you know, we obviously got together and reflected on the problems. And one thing we were really good at was retrospectives and making those useful and focusing on one problem at a time and designing small experiments to try to make that one big problem smaller. So we realized that because we testers were spending all of our time with the silly manual regression checklist, we didn't have any time for exploratory testing. So I'm sure most of you know what exploratory testing is, of using charters and doing time box discovery of different aspects of the features that we were working on and finding those unknown unknowns that we didn't think about as we were planning our features. We didn't write any acceptance tests for them because there were things we didn't really know about yet. And everybody up to the development director realized we needed to do this. Our system was complex and these things could easily get by, and the problem was the developers didn't know how to do exploratory testing. So the first thing that we did was just to throw away the manual release regression checklist. We just we're not doing it anymore. If somebody else wants to do it, they can, but we're not doing it. Interestingly enough, and the rest of the time I was there, which is quite a while, we never had a release regression that would have been found by that checklist. Just saying. And the managers realizing that the developers needed to do exploratory testing because 3 testers and 25 developers, that wasn't going to scale. So they added to the skill matrix for developers to move along their career path, move up the levels. They had to have certain competencies at exploratory testing. And then they asked us testers to help them learn how to do it. So we had workshops to teach them how to do exploratory testing. We really liked Elizabeth Henderson's book, Explore It, and using the charters and personas and things like that. So we had the workshops, and then we started pairing with them. Now, at this point, I've been trying for like 3.5 years to be able to pair regularly with the developers because I was used to doing that. And the development director was like, oh no, you'll slow my developers down. But he decided that it would be okay to do that so that we could help them learn how to do exploratory testing. Well, guess what? It didn't slow them down. And we could suggest things as they're writing code. You know, hey, let's try this in another browser. Or hey, maybe in your unit test, you could add a negative test, something like that. So this really started to work well. Plus, we got to have more empathy for them because we started seeing what they had to deal with the code. And so we had these workshops. Everybody got involved in this. The designers, the product owners, customer support, everybody learned how to do exploratory testing. And then so the developers were then responsible for exploratory testing at the story level, and for the feature or epic level, we wrote exploratory testing charters. We put them in the backlog along with our user stories, and everybody could pick up those charters and do more exploratory testing. And sure enough, looking at our metrics, our bug rates went down, our cycle time went up, we had less rework and less waste because we were finding the bugs early. So that was one piece of the puzzle. So I'm a big fan of visuals. When you have a problem make it visible and talk about it. So I'm going to give a couple examples of how I've done this and how you can do this with your team. And this is to help fit testing activities into continuous delivery. I haven't talked a lot to define continuous delivery, and I don't seem to have a slide for it, but it's all about doing frequent releases of very small changes, so it's low risk. This means you're going to release, once a week, twice a week, every day, multiple times a day. How do you fit testing into that? Abby Bangser and I paired on a pipeline workshop at European Testing Conference a couple years ago, and really struck me the value of visualizing your deployment pipeline. So if you you would do this online with Google Jamboard or Miro or some online collaboration tool, and start laying out all the stages or steps. What are the stages or steps that your code has to go through to get to production? Even if you don't have anything automated, you're still going through these stages. So this example here shows we do have manual steps, which is a big aha moment for me. I never thought of them as part of the pipeline, but of course they are. There's something you have to do before you release to have that confidence. So in this diagram, you can see the stages to the closer to the committing of the change that give us the fast feedback, like static code analysis, unit tests. They should run really fast. Let us know if we broke anything. The ones to the right are a slower feedback loop, but we feel more confident because we've done more testing. We've done testing probably in a more realistic production-like environment. We've done some human-centric testing like exploratory testing, security testing, accessibility testing, and we can actually make those asynchronous tasks because we can use things like release feature toggles to hide things from our users or only release them to ourselves or a few beta users or whatever until we have the confidence to turn them on for everybody. So there are lots of techniques. I can't get into that a lot now, but the point here is try to do this with your team. Get together and say, what is our pipeline? What does our deployment pipeline look like? What are all the stages in it? And it starts helping you see, how can we improve these feedback loops? How can we shorten them? Maybe we can do more activities in parallel. Maybe we can make use of feature toggles. So these are visual things that you can do to start conversations about ways to improve. And I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my Slack off. I can hear it clicking in the background. I'm a bad remote presenter. So that's one exercise, is the pipeline exercise. And then the other thing is, I talked about how those tests give you confidence. Do your automated tests give you confidence. So on our team that I've been talking about, our tests were flaky, and so when a flaky test failed, nobody looked into it. They just kicked the build, started it again. Sometimes those flaky tests were real production bugs, and they just were timing issues that were hard to reproduce. Our coverage wasn't very good because, honestly, the developers were doing all the test automation, and they're very good at writing production code and even writing test code. They're not so great at automating, at specifying tests. They don't know how to design tests. So failures were hard to diagnose. Nobody wanted to look into them. Maintenance was a problem. So these are very common problems that people have. So what do you do about this? Ashley Hunsberger has a test suite canvas that was inspired actually by Katrina Clokey's test suite canvas, and I highly recommend Katrina's book, Practical Guide to Testing and DevOps. But I know it's hard to read here, but you can download this. I will share these slides so that you can get to all these links. But you can download this from Ashley's GitHub repository and have a conversation with your team. Sit around and say, go through these questions. Why are we doing this test? What are the dependencies? What are the constraints? I'm not going to go into a lot of it here, but some of the most interesting things are like engagement and failure response. What happens if something fails? Who's going to respond to that? You know, constraints. A lot of teams have tried to do automation before and failed at it. So it's kind of an emotional constraint, or like you're kind of afraid to try again because that wasn't a good experience. So there's just a lot of conversations that you need to have. And so I actually couldn't get my team to either get together and do the pipeline visualization or to talk about the test canvas. However, I could do it myself. And so just by myself drawing out the pipeline and thinking about these different questions for each automated test suite in the pipeline, or perhaps automated test suites we didn't have yet, I was able to then talk through that with my team and get really good questions to ask people. And so we were able to make those improvements. So better to do it as the whole team, but at least if you can get the improvements to be done by the whole team, that's the goal. So I'm curious if your team could answer these questions. It may be a good conversation to have. So I would recommend taking a look at that test suite canvas and try to talk with your other team members about those questions. I think it can be really powerful. So I mentioned that our team had thousands of automated tests, and we were still having regression failures in production, sometimes really serious ones. So we clearly had a problem. And what we decided to do was talk about risk. We needed the tests that covered the riskiest areas. So we got a cross-section of people from the team in the room: developers, designers, customer support, product owner, testers. I would advise doing this with 10 people or fewer, because a bigger group than that, it's hard to have these kind of conversations. And we just, one of the senior developers wrote the architecture of the front end onto a whiteboard, and we started talking about the risks of each area and just started writing them in red on the whiteboard. And this helped us to prioritize where we needed to focus our test automation and make sure we had good coverage. And then we could go through our existing tests, we could identify where we needed better coverage. And we also, as a team, committed to doing better practices. So for example, for our UI level tests, we decided to start using the page object model as a better way to write maintainable and more reliable tests that were easier to diagnose and easier to change. So that was one example. And so we started, anytime we went in to write a new feature or went in to change an old feature, we either refactored the existing tests or just wrote new tests to start replacing them. And again, we saw the results right away. We saw more regressions caught by the automated tests and fewer problems getting into production. So it's a big investment, but we could see quickly that it was really, really paying off. So there are a lot of ways to talk about risk. If you're not familiar with risk storming, you can probably just Google that. But Ministry of Testing sells test sphere cards, and risk storming is one of the things you can do with it. And Baron Van Dela, I'm not sure how to say his name, he's coming out with a remote version of this, and other people have made their own remote versions of it. So it is something you can do remotely. I've watched the session; it works really well, even remotely. There's traditional risk analysis where you just talk about what's the probability this will happen, what's the impact if it does happen, and focus on those high risk areas. Mind maps, anything visual to guide the conversations about risk. You just have to have the conversations, hopefully before you start working on a new feature. But we can't know all the possible risks. So maybe we get an unexpected load on our system. Maybe somebody accidentally drops a table in the production database. Some service goes down that we're using. We deploy a configuration file that's incorrect, causes problems. And these are things we can't replicate in testing before we release. Our test environments don't look like production. Our systems are really complicated, especially if you're using distributed systems in the cloud. So, and you can't set up an alert in your monitoring and logging system if you don't know a problem's going to happen. You can't have an alert for it. So these unknown unknowns, what do we do about those? It's a big problem. So that's where we get into observability. I don't know how many of you have heard of this. It's pretty new. And one of the best metaphors I've heard to explain observability is from Pierre Vincent. He has a really good talk. If you go to the Ministry of Testing site, he's got a really good talk from Test Bash Manchester. But so let's say you have a really fast car and you love to drive your car really fast, but now it's foggy. You can't see. So you have to slow down. So even though you have this really fast, powerful car, you're not able to do what the car is meant to do. So we don't have the visibility. Now airplanes, on the other hand, they fly through clouds all the time, and they're fast because they have instrumentation that lets them have visibility in other ways so they can see to fly fast. So what we can do is instrument our code, capture all the events in our code, and nowadays we can store big data in the cloud. We have tools to help us analyze that big data. And so when our complex systems fail in really complex ways, we can ask the questions. We can explore. We can do exploratory testing in production using these tools. And you can respond really quickly. The last team I was on really excelled at this, which was good because we weren't very good at testing before we released. And within minutes of knowing there was a problem, they could respond and either revert it or get a fix out. It was just amazing because they captured all the events with high cardinality so that they could trace, if somebody got an error, they could trace exactly what happened leading up to that error, and they could reproduce it quickly, and they could fix it quickly. And I mean, there are other things we can use this for. What are our users doing in production? Probably something we didn't expect them to do. Now we can go back and focus our testing to, now that we know what people are doing. We can redesign our features. We can make our user experience better. So there are lots and lots of things we can do. And using tools like Elastic, Mixpanel, Splunk, New Relic, Datadog, there are all kinds of tools. The team I was talking about that was having all the troubles with the trying to get to continuous delivery, we had all those tools, but we didn't have observability yet. It was too new. We read this article by Cindy Sridharan that I have this graphic from, used with her permission, about testing in production the safe way, and our minds were blown, and it really changed how we started to look at what we could do with that production data. So that was a very cool thing. And we started using the data to create hypotheses around our new features. Like we believe that by adding this capability, our customers will be able to do this, and we will measure that in some way. So it really helped us proactively prevent problems. So this is all about the whole team getting involved. How do we do that? So I think it's really key to focus on the value to the customer. Now, as a tester, I have the tendency to just dive into what I can see as an obviously fragile part of the code and find the bugs. But if it's some edge case that's not going to really bother the customers, why should I spend time on that? I need to make sure that the happy path that's really important to the customer works. So we have to start out by talking about what's most valuable for each feature, for each story, and figure out how we can deliver that value in small increments at a sustainable pace frequently, so that they're always getting more value and we're not wasting time on things they don't really want. And then the other thing about working on it as a whole team, if you've got people with all these different skill sets, people with different experience, people with different backgrounds, we all have unconscious biases. This really gets in our way of things like confirmational bias, where I see what I expect to see because I know how the system works. That really gets in my way as a tester. But I think by having a lot of different viewpoints, I may not spot something, but somebody else does, then that's going to make me spot something else. So working together really helps with our lateral thinking. That's my experience. I don't have any science around that, but that's what I think. And competencies are more important than roles. We still are going to have specialties. I think we're always going to have specialists on teams because nobody can know everything. So Agile and DevOps are about having generalizing specialists and people who have a lot of different skills, and that's great. But I think we still need people with the deep skills that can help us learn at least basic and meta skills for that area. So we need designers, we need database experts, we need operations experts, site reliability engineers, developers, designers, you name it. We need a lot. It takes a village. We need a lot of people. I'm a big fan, I mentioned pairing earlier, I'm a big fan of transferring knowledge by pairing and also using pairing and mobbing, which is just pairing, kind of take it up a notch where you have a driver and a navigator and you rotate those positions frequently every few minutes. That helps you, again, overcoming the biases, having a lot of lateral thinking outside the box, noticing things, and also, most importantly, have everybody in the room so that if you have a question, everybody's there. So, for example, our team that was working on continuous delivery, we started having mob acceptance test sessions. So when a developer pair had a few stories ready to go, we would get the product owner, the designer, the developers, a tester, and somebody from customer support in a room, and we would do a mob acceptance test session where we'd have a driver and a navigator, and for each story that we tested, we'd switch roles. And so if we were looking at a UI story, for example, and something looked funny with the design, the designer was right there. We could just say, does this look right? And they would say yes or no. And we'd know whether to accept that story or reject it. Or if there were error handling, didn't look quite right, the product owner was right there. Or the customer support person could say, well, I don't think the customers are going to like that. So it was really quick. In about half an hour, we could get through 4 or 5 stories instead of waiting days and days for the product owner to get to doing his acceptance. So that was a great way to transfer knowledge as well as to efficiently get through a lot of testing. So, this is really all about people. Agile and DevOps both are all about people and letting people do their best work. So we've got to build those relationships to break down those silos, learn all the different things we need to learn. So we can't do food anymore. I should have changed. I meant to take that out of the slide because we can't do that remotely. But we can still chat about the weather or chat about, I don't know, what we're going to do when quarantining is over. But asking for help is, I think, the best way that you can make friends, because if somebody does you a favor and says, oh, here, let me show you what's in our deployment pipeline. Once they've done that for you, they know they're your friend because they did something for you, and offer help as well. This building relationships, and my new job, I'm really having to focus on this because I don't know anybody. So it's really important for me to get to know people, and it's kind of hard to do when everybody's remote because you don't have those conversations around the coffee stand or the water cooler. But it still can be done. I'm having a lot of virtual coffees and virtual lunches. So I'd like you to stop for a minute. I'm gonna time this again, and think about somebody maybe on your team that you're not working with a lot, or somebody outside of your team that could help you with something, and write down a couple ideas right quick how you might connect with them. Have a virtual coffee with them, or send them a question, or whatever. Just think about that for a minute. And when you're done, you could admire my donkey Chester about to cross a bridge. We have a lot of covered bridges in Vermont, although this particular one is not in Vermont. So I really think this building these relationships is super important. I mean, my utopia is being on a collaborative team. We all work together, we all focus on the biggest problem and try to make it better, and we all help each other. It's really important. So we know from a lot of scientific studies done by people like Amy Edmondson at Google, the state of DevOps surveys, that psychological safety is a prerequisite to being a high-performing team. People had to feel safe to experiment and fail. People had to feel safe to raise issues and point out problems. We need leaders with a vision who know how to support people without getting in their way. And that's what agile development was supposed to be about. That's what DevOps is supposed to be about. And if you focus on speed, you tend to cut corners, you get technical debt, you get technical guilt, which is technical debt you know you're never going to go pay back. You just start to accumulate a lot of craft that slows your team down. It doesn't speed you up. When you focus on quality, you learn the important practices you need to succeed. You build a solid code base with maintainable, fast tests, fast feedback loops, good pipelines to get your code out to production, good feature flagging, all the things that you need, all the components of that. Working together, developers, operations specialists, everybody working together. And I like this idea that we hear a lot now, you build it, you run it, meaning everybody, whether they're operations specialists, site reliability engineers, platform engineers, or software developers and testers and designers, we own this together. We're building a product and we're going to take care of it in production. We're not going to heave it over the wall and let somebody else worry about what happens at 3 a.m. when there's a problem. That removing those safety nets makes it a lot better. And as testers, we don't want to be the safety nets. We want to be the quality enablers. Help the rest of the team get the skills they need to build that quality in. And also learn in the business domain, because I find when you know the business domain, you can help the customers eliminate extras they don't really need and focus on the business value and the customer value to customers. And you look like you're going faster because you're doing less. That's really important. So the principles of continuous delivery from Jez Humble and David Farley. If you go to continuousdelivery.com, you can see these. And this is one of my favorite books. It's, like I say, it's really all about testing and quality. So I think that these are really good ways to mitigate risks and put more joy into your work. We really need to enjoy what we're doing. It should be fun. We're having to spend a lot of time on this. So focus on that. But I've just bombarded you with a whole bunch of information. And really, we can only change one small step at a time. If you go, oh, look, I have a bug on my slide. I screwed up that text. You know, don't try to boil the ocean. Just use your retrospectives, find your biggest problem, your biggest impediment, and design a small experiment that can make that smaller or less bad. And measure it. So get a hypothesis. We believe that by doing X, then we will have outcome Y, and we will know we've succeeded when some measurable thing, when cycle time is shorter, when our defect rate is lower, when our rejection rate of our stories is lower. So look at what you can measure to know that you're making progress instead of just like, well, I feel like that's better or I don't feel like that's better. So get your team together and start talking about these things and use some of these visuals to guide the conversations. And again, just focus on one thing at a time. Don't try to do all these things at once. But, you know, how can we do a better job of fitting testing activities in when we're trying to release more frequently? And how do we get the whole team to understand? The developers need to be responsible for their code correctness. The designers need to be responsible for really understanding users, looking at production data. What are people doing? What do people need? We need to look at production data, see the patterns that are going out there to help guide our testing, and get everybody engaged in that. So I do have a bunch of Oh, and so this is what I also meant to say. So I talk about using visuals, and that's a little harder to do, but you can use you can use Google Slides, you can use the Zoom whiteboard. There are lots of great collaboration tools. So use those, and again, just try to focus on one problem and do one small, inexpensive experiment at a time. And I've got all these resources for you to learn more, because I know this was just a blast of a bunch of ideas at once. And like I say, I will share that. I'll send the slides to your wonderful organizers, and so that they can make them available to you. And I'm going to stop sharing so we can do Q&A. Oh, look at, I can look at the chat now. Thank you for putting all those links in. Oh, I don't really see any questions though. Let's see, participants. I mean, I can unmute individual people, but it's hard to see who wants to be unmuted. Oh, there's somebody who raised their hand, I think. Joao Muta? I just unmuted you. Did you have your hand raised? Maybe he didn't mean to raise his hand.
Hello?
Yeah?
What did you ask me?
Oh, no, it wasn't you. It was a different one.
João Mota.
He had his hand raised. It looked like he had his hand raised in this thing, so. Well, I guess not. Okay, he must have done that accidentally. I left all this time for questions. Nobody has any questions?
Can I add something?
Thiago Ferreira, go ahead.
Yeah. In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge to involve all the team in the quality mindset?
I think the biggest challenge is that most teams are way too busy. They're not, if they are agile teams, they should be allowed to manage their own workload and not take on too much work. A lot of teams are not allowed to manage their own workload, and even when they are, they take on too much work because they really want to make their business stakeholders happy. They really want to make their customers happy. It's hard to try to limit your work in progress, but it's super important. You need to give yourselves time to learn, time to experiment, and it will pay off. You will go faster in the long run, but for the short term, you may need to make an investment. So I think a lot of times that's a management problem. If management is only driving them to get those features out and not rewarding them for quality, because like I mentioned on the team I was talking about, exploratory testing was a skill developers had to learn to advance. So they were quite motivated to learn, right? When they're not rewarded for learning testing skills, why would they bother to learn them? I mean, intrinsic, if they have intrinsic motivation, they'll do it anyway, but I think the management has to support it. And that's why I say we need leaders with a vision. Of course, you can be a leader without being a manager, but we need leaders with a vision who know how to support people and nurture that learning culture, because we have to keep learning. So I think, yeah, I think maybe the first thing that has to happen is the team. Well, I think the very first thing that has to happen is that conversation about what level of quality can we commit to delivering, because you know you're going to run into problems, and if you don't make a strong commitment, you may just give up. But the teams I've been on, when we committed to that, it's like, oh, you know, we wanted to do behavior-driven development through the API level, but the architecture of our product is such that we can't even test at the API level. We can't automate tests at the API level. How will we do BDD at the API level? Oh, let's try it at the UI level. That doesn't seem like it'll work to us, but let's try it because we said that we would do this. And so committing to learning practices that you think will get you towards your goal and not letting obstacles get in your way is really important. And experimenting. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you learn something.
Miguel Oliveira, you can make your question.
Okay, so can you hear this?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, thanks a lot for you to share all of this knowledge and experience. I'm interested in a part of your presentation that is related with avoiding manual checks, or let's say, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but you are talking about skip the manual checks or regression testing, manual regression testing, and moving forward to explanatory testing, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, yeah, that's basically what we did. I wouldn't say everybody should throw their checklists out. And it's very domain dependent. So this product that we were developing was an online project tracking tool. So something like Jira, not Jira, but something like it. Nothing bad's going to happen if our site goes down. It'll just inconvenience people. So a lot of this is dependent on your domain. If it's life critical or money, when I work for a financial services company, we wouldn't have done that. However, if you do need to have manual regression testing, so what I've done for that, like I joined a team at a financial services company, the one that became this really high performing team. But when I started, there was no test automation. And we were dealing with people's money. It had to work. And so I went to the business stakeholder and said, what are the things that absolutely have to work? And they made me a list of like 20 things in priority order. So I wrote manual checklists for each one of those things. And then at the end of our 2-week sprint, or a couple days before the end of our 2-week sprint, we all got together. I distributed those tests among everybody in the team, developer, product owner, designers, database experts, whoever, and everybody suffered that pain together, because it's soul crushing to do that every couple weeks or more often. And that also really motivated everybody to want to start automating tests. And so as the developers on that team learned to do test-driven developments, we were really committed to doing that, because we know how powerful it is in terms of avoiding and preventing bugs. I've created some smoke tests through the UI with a pretty simple UI testing tool that the whole team agreed on using. And so within about 8 months, I had automated everything on that checklist, and we didn't need it anymore. But like I say, sometimes there are things you can't automate it. So the team just has to make a decision. But if it has to be done, it shouldn't always be the testers who do it.
Okay, yep. But my question was more like, let's say you want to increase your team, and you are keep receiving new guys, and you need to teach them, and at the same time you are automating. How would you do it without that description? Because if you don't have documentation, if you don't have that checklist you were mentioning, there is no way to tell them, okay, you can start by there.
Well, I take a different approach to onboarding new testers. I pair with them so that I'm there to answer their questions. But you're right, documentation is important. I think it's important when you do automate tests to make them living documentation. So write them in a readable way. Of course, if everybody on the team can read code, you can use something like RSpec. It doesn't really matter. But if people who aren't coders have to read it, then you might use Gherkin or something that everybody can understand. And the tests are documenting the system, and we know they're accurate because they have to keep passing, so we have to keep them up to date. So that's a good way to document. But you should have other documentation. I mean, I'm a fan of putting documentation on wikis and stuff. It's just that takes some effort to keep up to date and stuff, and so you have to commit to doing that.
Thanks.
But that's a good question. It's really important to think about that when you bring on new people.
Claudio Costa, you can make your question.
Thank you. Hey, Lisa, thanks for your talk. I have a question regarding, because I've faced this situation, maybe you have as well, of having some old-timer colleagues or people who've been there for a while. And so whenever you talk about improving the process or changing things up, I often hear, but we've always done it like this, why change? Probably all heard that. Mm-hmm. How do you approach people that have this kind of mindset? apart from firing them. No, but how do you convince them to that actually changing this approach, even if it has a high initial investment of time, will bring benefits down the road?
That's a really good point, and cultural change is hard. So if a lot of people feel that way, it's especially hard. But you know, one of the things to remember, I've learned a lot from Linda Rising's work. She's done a lot of work in unconscious bias and how human brains work, which all the people selling us things know how our brains work, but logic and facts generally don't help. So one of the things I've used is Linda Rising and Mary Lynn Manns have a book called More Fearless Change, and it's all these patterns to try to start change. And we can all be change agents and try to start change. So that's one of the tools I've used. The other thing I do is just to try to propose it as an experiment. So I really did, like this team I've been talking about during the session, they did test-driven development, but they would not do behavior-driven development. Like, they didn't want to do it. There were developers on the team who wanted to do it, and we would have various efforts of starting it, but some manager would always slap it back down. So I'm like, what can I do? We're not going to do that. How can I get better shared understanding? Because we were getting stories rejected all the time because the developers thought they knew what to build, and they built it and gave it to the product owner, and the product owner said, no, that wasn't what I wanted. So I said, well, let's try example mapping. Would you let me have 30 minutes and I'll show you with that slide? And I did a little kind of hands-on workshop to show them example mapping. Matt Wynn has a great little exercise you can do to show the value of it. And then they all seemed to like it. And I said, well, for our next pre-iteration planning meeting, do you mind if we try this? So just an experiment. It's just like one time. It's like an hour out of your lives. And a lot of people are willing to try that. And maybe they're skeptical, but you know, maybe when they try it, they'll see they like it. So just trying really small experiments. Don't make them think it's going to be any kind of big deal. Sometimes that works, but it can be tough. I mean, I've had jobs where I tried all these things and I even had really successful projects, but then everybody would go back to the old way of working because they were always in a big panic. So sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you can't succeed, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Felipe, you can ask your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Lisa, so much for all the information. Amazing stuff to digest on. Very simple question. So suppose you're doing kind of things right, so to say. You're like writing your tests just before development. So you're like doing, test driven and all is good, but you're writing an app or a system which is cross-platform. So the guy is doing the desktop stuff, write excellent tests, do excellent developments, and then you have the guys doing mobile or some other system, which, the simplest thing might break each other. How to tackle this? I think this is a very difficult thing.
So they're working on different platforms, but they're interacting with each other and affecting each other? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So basically, it's if a system should be presentable to a customer through different platforms, as it should nowadays. So it should be working on desktop as well as in your iPhone, as well as an Android, and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. These systems have different requirements, and they have different front ends. In the end, will have different specs, so different tests, of course. And so the smallest tweak from a desktop app might break the system in the mobile app. So, and the test driven. So in the end, one has to make kind of a sanity check after each smallest development. I think there must be a better way to tackle this.
Yeah, I have to confess that until now, I have always worked for really small companies, which is easier to handle that stuff. So on the team where we were doing the project tracking tools, it was exactly that. We had iOS, we had Android, and we had the web app, and we had those same problems. And the way we tried to help with that was to rotate people around so that developers worked on all parts of the system on all platforms. And then the testers, we were kind of the butterflies, kind of cross-pollinating. So I could be working with the Android team and also with one of the front-end web app, or the web app team doing some change on the front end, and they're changing, or maybe they're changing something in the API, and I could say, hey, you need to go talk to the Android team, because I think if you change that, it's gonna affect this. So as a tester, I could kind of like make sure people talk to each other, and then also by people rotating through those other teams. We didn't force people to rotate, but we were just like, hey, would you like to work on Android, for a while? And they enjoyed doing that, except for after a while we couldn't get anyone to get on the iOS team because our iOS app was horrible. It had been written really badly. Nobody wanted to work on it anymore. So yeah, there are definitely problems with that. But again, it's just a problem for the whole team to solve, keep talking about it. Because originally we'd had like the back-end team and the front-end team, and that was really terrible. So having vertical teams made it work. And we eventually had feature teams. So the feature teams needed to make it work everywhere. So that was a really good way to approach it as well. It's like, okay, we're going to do the web app and we're going to do the mobile ones too. And of course, you had to get somebody with that expertise to be on the team, and sometimes we had to share those people. So that was hard too, but that probably worked the best.
Okay, thank you. Excellent.
Lisa, Graça Silva asked to you, how do you see a miscellaneous team, like contractors, different countries, getting together to mob test?
Different people from who are some of our contractors, and they're all over. I mean, that's the beauty of mobbing, is you can easily do it remotely if everybody's remote. We had more trouble doing it when some of us were in the office and some people were remote, because the technical challenges of that were more trouble. But I personally, I'm trying to think, I don't think I've done any remote mobbing myself, but I have talked to lots of people who find it really effective. I mean, and I don't see anything in the way of it. I guess for me as a facilitator, what would be missing is I usually put big charts on the wall with all the rules and stuff. You'd have to do that virtually. But I think it's a good way to share knowledge, transfer knowledge, and get a lot of different viewpoints. I would just experiment with it, and I would just do it, start with just a few short sessions. Don't try to go for several hours with it or anything, maybe just an hour, 2 hours. And always debrief at the end of your mobbing session. And so you can tweak it next time. It's like, oh, we were switching every 6 minutes. Did that feel okay to people, or should we do it more frequently, or have a longer time? I think the debrief is really important to try different things and see if you can make it better. And again, approach it as an experiment. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. But I would definitely, get good guidance before you start. So I really like Lisi Hawk's blog post on how she got started. Well, she's got a series, I guess, of blog posts on how she got started with mob testing, because that's what I did. I felt she's got links to other expert material on how to do that. But that's how I got started with facilitating it, and I found it really helpful. So, get the good foundation, keep the first session short at first, do the debrief, and see if you can improve it to where everybody feels comfortable with it.
So we have one question. How Pedro Sequeira asked, how would you convince your management team that a CD/CI pipeline is way better than the bunch of functional testers, and that could bring them more confidence and a faster pace in development?
Oh, that's a really good question too. I think as testers, I find that managers always say they want good quality, but they don't even know what that means, and they don't really want to make that investment. So I think it's our job to educate them. Also, I've heard from pretty reliable sources that CTOs, people who are in charge of all of the development, that the thing they're most interested in is reducing cost. It's like, oh, I mean, that's horrible, but apparently that's really true. So I think it's, again, we have to be influencers. We have to be change agents. We have to educate people. There's a book that just came out last summer or last fall called Leading Quality by Ronald Cummings, John, and I can't remember the other author's name. But it's aimed at explaining to executives and managers, why is quality important? Why do we need to test? And I think that's a really good book to read so that you know how to speak the business people's language or the manager's language, or just get them to read it. And Janet Gregory and I, shameless plug, we wrote our last book, Agile Testing Condensed, to make a really small book in hopes that managers might read it, because they have to understand this is an investment, yeah, but it's going to pay off. It's going to let us go faster. It's going to let us have more confidence. It's going to let us get value to customers quicker. That's just an educational process, and it's hard. It's hard to influence people. So, but all we can do is try to do it. I make this all sound really easily. I can tell you all this stuff, but when I'm trying to tell my own team, oh, let's try this, over the years, they're not impressed that I wrote books or spoke at conferences about it. They're just like, oh, that sounds like a crazy idea, Lisa. So it can be hard to convince people to try things. So.
Tiago Ferreira, yes?
Hi, Lisa again. What do you say that's a good argument for convince the developers or the whole team to, get involved in quality? Because at some point, development and testing are seen like different things in different roles. So, sometimes you are trying to sell them that the idea that I will give you more work to do in your workday. So, it's complicated to deal with.
Yeah, again, it kind of boils down to a cultural thing, but do you have retrospectives with the whole team? So I guess I would probably start there. To me, every testing problem is a problem for the whole team to solve, and so I would just keep bringing testing problems to the team. Now, it's hard though, because a lot of times in retrospective, you vote on what to take action on or whatever, and because there are never as many testers, those teams don't get voted up. But I think you just have to keep making your case, make it visible. So I found whenever you have a problem, making it visible is the first step. So that's even harder to do remotely. We used to could put big things on the wall or whatever, but maybe like share some statistics if you can, especially if you can make like a little visual dashboard, maybe of bug counts or something like that, or build failures or whatever it is, and share that on Slack every day. It's like, here's today's quality information. Have a quality dashboard. Share that on Slack every day, so people can visually see that doesn't look very good, and then try to get people to talk about it. And again, just try to do one small thing at a time. So it's easier for you to just pick one thing and start working on it. And the other thing is just try not to get sucked into that safety net role. Alan Page and Brent Jensen have a great metaphor of developers. Like, testers are the safety net if developers are the circus performers on the tightrope, and they know we're there. They're not going to get very good at tightrope walking, because if they fall, we'll catch them. Take that safety net away. Well, we can lower the tightrope to a few inches above the ground, and that means they're learning to do a better job of writing their code correctly, building quality into their code, having unit tests as a safety net instead of testers, and then we can start raising the tightrope back up. So, but again, it needs time. The management needs to give the developers time and training to improve their own skills. So everybody has to grow their skills together. That's why it has to be the whole team. As testers, we can't make people better developers, but if we can get the whole team to say, hey, you know, we really have a lot of fragile code here. Our code's not testable. I really recommend Rob Meany and Ash Winter's Team Guide to Testability, which has a bunch of exercises you can do with your team to talk about how testable your code is and try to make it more testable. So using some exercises from that book could be helpful.
Thanks.
Maybe a last question. Diana Neves asked, what can you advise for passing for ISTQB testing foundation level theory to make test plan in real life?
I'm afraid I'm not at all familiar with the ISTQB. But yeah, I mean, I think the good thing about certification programs is that hopefully you got some good training and some good learning. So maybe just to bring those techniques that you learned and talk to your team about them and say, hey, I learned this for my foundation level 3 exam. What do you think of this? Is this something that we could use? Bring that to your whole team and see if it's something the team thinks that they could try, or maybe they can think of a way to tweak it that would work better for them. I just don't have experience with that myself.
Okay, no. Yes.
Yes. Besides being an organizer, I also have questions, but I have some questions, but I'm only going to ask one. Lisa,
Okay.
in the first slides of the pipeline that you mentioned performance testing and stress testing, but I was wondering what tests were done or how they were performed. Human, I mean manual. I don't like to say manual, but it seems like a monkey. But
Human-centric is what I like to say.
But
now.
what kind of tests and stress testings were done on that pipeline? How did you put that?
Well, for that particular team, we didn't need to do performance and stress testing in our pipeline. It was just something that we need to do if we change the architecture. So for example, when we moved to the cloud, we had to do a lot of performance testing and load testing. When we moved from Amazon Web Services to Google Cloud, we had to do all that again. But we did make it part of our pipeline. But there was just a good talk at the Lisbon DevOps meetup last night. And I wish I could think of the name of the fellow who did it, but he was talking about a way that his team built performance or load tests and made them part of their pipeline. But the really cool thing about it was that the tool that they use, and I don't remember the name of it, if you look at my Twitter stream from yesterday, you'll find it, that the developers were able to run those tests locally. And it seems like, well, why would you run load tests locally? Well, guess what? He said they found countless bugs and they fixed them locally before they ever checked in their code. And I mean, to me, that's the holy grail of automated tests. If developers should run them locally, and any kind of automated tests, they need to run them locally and make sure their code's okay before they check it in. So I wish I could tell you more about that. It's just not my area of expertise, but I do know that people are able to find ways to build them into their pipeline. But running locally is even more important, I think.
Yeah, thanks for the answer.
Artillery, that was it. Thank you. Everybody goes to the same meetups.
Please pass me the ball.
What's that?
Did everyone ask the questions to Lisa? Probably not.
Well, you can certainly ask me later because I have to do. I'm on a panel of the online test conference in a little while.
It's -5 hours there, and you must be with a lot of work. So, if you pass me, I'm the host now.
How do I make you the host?
You click on me and.
Oh, that's right. There we go. Sorry, I didn't realize I ever got to be the host.
Yeah, yes, because you were sharing things and managing. Okay, guys, probably there were some questions that it was not possible to listen answer. I asked one. I should be the moderated also along my other colleagues, but we are no different from the audience, right? We all have the same goal. We are testers or not, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Lisa, for your time and availability when we approached you in December. It was very nice to have you. You opened a new door. Now we can have more meetups with all over the world.
Yeah.
The PTM or another entity. And QAs or not, see you the next time. And I'm going to ask a big round of applause to Lisa. So I'm going to put everybody in with sound, I think. So everybody with sound now. A big applause.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay, guys.
Thank you. And
Thank you, Lisa.
and do feel free to get in touch with me on Twitter or email. I'm just lisa@lisacrispin.com. So.
Okay. Bye, guys. I'm going to shut this meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Boa noite.
Boa noite. Boa noite, Portugal.
Boa noite.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.